If we let these machines actually care about the truth, they will have to cultivate wisdom.
But how do we do them to care?
How do we do this with human children? How do we turn them from animals into moral agents? We have to mentor them properly. We have to create the right environment. We have to become the best possible role models.
I'm here with John Vervaeke. And who are you, John? Tell me.
I'm an associate professor at the University of Toronto in cognitive psychology and cognitive science. I do work on intelligence, rationality, wisdom, consciousness, altered states of consciousness, mystical and transformative experience. And I'm the author of two video series. One is Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. The other is After Socrates. Like you, I have a regular YouTube show when I talk to people called Voices with Vervaeke. And then I also have another thing I do, the Cognitive Science Show, where I do a bunch of cognitive science topics like consciousness, the nature of the self. We're releasing one with Greg Enriquez on transcendent naturalism, how to give an account of transcendent experiences within a naturalistic framework. So that's the kind of stuff I do. I am also, I guess, the figurehead, is that the right word, of the Vervaeke Foundation, where we create communities of practices, courses, workshops, and we support a Respond network of other emerging communities of practice where people are serious about trying to cultivate wisdom and virtue and enhance meaning in their life, perhaps a sense of the sacred, whether or not that's within or without a religious tradition. So I do a lot of that work as well. So I think that's the only parts of me that your
give it up for so many things that you do. So you are a professor, you're doing podcasts, foundation, so many things. And also you are going to other people's podcasts with all the workflow that you have. So it's amazing. So what, out of all the things that you do, what bring you the most joy out of all the activity? What podcast specifically, or what type of conversation, or what maybe job you have in your life, or your family, or out of everything?
I don't know if I can pick one thing. I mean, I really like, I'm a theorist in a scientific sense, in a philosophical sense. I love it when I come up with a good theoretical argument and other people appreciate it. I love that. But I also, create and refine and help teach practices like philosophical contemplation, philosophical fellowship, like dialectic and dialogos. And I love being in that state when I'm in the flow, that shared flow state with people. I feel like a little bit of Socrates has come alive for me. I love both of those a lot. Those are my two favorite out of all the things. I love so much of what I do. It's hard for me, but to answer your question, but those are the two, perhaps, if I had to pick. Yes.
And you have a family as well?
Yes. I have two sons. One is living with me because he's just recently got permanent position as a high school biology teacher, and I'm very proud of him. My younger son, he finished one apprenticeship program. He's doing another. He did extremely well, top of, not just top of his class, top of the program. He's a music producer, sound engineer, and a music composer. I'm really proud of him too. And then my partner, she has two kids, her son and her daughter, and they're both also young adults. I have a very good relationship with them, too. Very good relation. I love them too, and I try to provide a good model for them as much as I can in their lives.
So how much money do you make with all this stuff that you make, like with the podcast?
How much money?
Yes.
Well, you have to understand, all of the money that comes in, I mean, I take some money, like if I go and speak somewhere and they give me an honorarium or something like that. But all the money that comes in actually goes to a non-for-profit organization, the Vervaeke Foundation. I get a small honorarium from that on a monthly basis, but then all of that rest of that money, like 80% of it, goes into getting people to work for the foundation, supporting projects, supporting scientific experiments, going into like the series I produce, hiring a film crew, all of that. So I'm not hurting for money, but I mean, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with my son. I'm not after wealth. I mean, I'll get some money from the books. I'll get some money from the online courses. I'll get, but again, never more than like 25%, because I don't want to be tempted by wealth, and I don't want to be tempted by too much fame. So I'm trying to keep an arm's length distance. I've only hired people and partnered with people who are committed to not only doing things with virtuosity, but doing things as virtuously as we possibly can.
What does that mean with virtuosity?
What does that mean? Well, that means, it means some concrete, specific things. Like I said, I try to keep an arm's length distance from the things that can inflate a person. I try to share credit. I do things in concert with other people, so the attention's not all focused on me. I delegate and I defer, and I try to raise up into the limelight other people, so that things don't get over-focused on me in a fashion. I try to make sure that, like I said, most of the talent, most of the time, most of the money is being given out of love, and because people are really wanting to make a difference in the world, to address the meaning crisis, to help people fill in a vacuum that's been left for most of them by the recession of religion. So that's what I mean virtuously. Well, I'll put it in a sentence. I want to die a good man. I want people to say he made mistakes, and he's far from perfect. He wasn't a saint or a sage, but he was a good man. And throughout, he was a good man. And that's very, very important to me. One of the proudest things I'm proud of is my stepdaughter was talking with my partner, and I wasn't around, and my partner was saying, and she and her best friend were talking, and they just happened to be talking about me, and she said, John's really reliable. He's a reliable person. And my stepdaughter said, oh, he's more than reliable. He's solid like a rock. And that, I'm like, I've got a lot of other accolades, and I'm grateful for them. But that to me, I want it, right? I want that. That's what I aspire to be.
So since you don't like to have a lot of money, what a better question to ask that if I give you $1 trillion, how do you spend it in this society to have maximum impact in the world in the right way that you're describing?
Yeah. Well, what I would do is I would try to divide it equally between furthering the cognitive science around all these things that I'm talking about. I put a lot of money into the Vervaeke Foundation because I genuinely believe in all the things it's doing, all the educational programs, all the outreach programs. And then I would put money into the Respond Network and other people, Rafe Kelly, Benita Roy, Greg Enriquez, people who are doing amazing, important work, and not just theoretical. They're doing actual educational, transformative work. I would do everything I can.
Can you explain me a bit more detail? Like, you actually have $1 trillion. This is so much money. So how what is the best way to spend it in a society to have the maximum impact? Like maybe the poorest country, like actual examples of drive me through what you are going to do with them.
So what I just said bleeds into the final vision of that, with all that money, which is I want to steal the culture. I want to promote the stealing of the culture. I want to do what Christianity did, like this book, right? The Rise of Christianity, right? I want to do what Christianity did. They created all of these small communities of practice, new ways of being, new ways of seeing, new ways of relating to each other, the way of agape, right? And then they networked together and they created a whole alternative culture that eventually captured the Roman Empire and addressed questions of meaning, wisdom, spirituality, connection, but also, questions of, poverty, medical help, like do all of that. Because I am convinced that neither the academic establishment, the market, or the state can solve the meaning crisis. This is a deeper problem. This requires a comprehensive cultural transformation. And I would pump all of that money into where I think that could be afforded, where that could be generated.
Can you define me the meaning crisis? What
Yes.
does that mean?
So let's start from the cognitive science. The very processes that make you intelligently adaptive make you perpetually susceptible to self-deception. And that's self-destruction.
In English,
pardon me?
In English, if you want to say it in English, I'm joking because that was a lot of words that I didn't understand.
Oh, okay. So let me give you a more concrete example. I'll just give you a concrete example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. Okay, can you pay attention to everything that's in your environment?
No.
Right? In fact, there is so much in your environment, even in the room you're in. You spend the rest of your lifetime paying it. So you have to screen off most of that in order to solve your problems, achieve your goals. Yes?
Yes.
But that means that constantly you're ignoring information. Yes?
Yes.
Now, is it possible from time to time that the information you're ignoring is exactly the information you most need?
Yes, very possible.
That's self-deception. That's an example of self-deception. The very processes you're using in order to deal with all of the information so that you can solve your problems make you ongoingly subject to self-deception. And cultures have figured this out. And they figured out, okay, now I don't want to shut off that adaptive function. I don't want to say, pay attention to everything all the time because you can't do it. So what I have to do is I have to figure a way to train your attention so it gets more flexible. It gets better at dealing and opening itself up to those moments of insight when you've realized, and helping you regulate yourself so you can adjust to those different insight, self-regulation, adaptivity. This is wisdom. And so you need a bunch of practices. Like you want to train your attention. You might do meditation. You might do contemplation. You might do a martial art. And the thing is, no one practice will give you everything you need to be wiser. You need a whole bunch of practices working together. I call it an ecology of practices. And across time and culture, people have come up with ecologies of practices. And then they found homes for those so people could practice together, support each other. And then those homes would network. And those homes would network together. Those are religions. That's what religions and, ancient philosophy. So this is what Christianity and Buddhism and all these things did for us. Now, the problem is that has receded for most people. Most people would not, like the demographic group that is growing faster than any other is the nuns, the NONES. That means they have no official religious allegiance. And many people who still go to church or go to the mosque or go to the synagogue or go to the temple, it's not working for them. It doesn't jive with the scientific technological worldview. And so they're hungry for wisdom, right? Now, wisdom isn't just an intellectual thing. Remember I said it's about adaptive. Think about an organism. It's adaptive if it fits its environment, if it belongs really well. So when that goes out of sync, you feel like you don't belong. The world doesn't make sense. There isn't a home for you. I don't mean a shelter, but you don't feel like you're at home in the world, in the universe, even in your own skin. And that can lead to mental health issues or addictions or trying to escape into the virtual world or turn things that aren't religion like superheroes and comic books into, bad replacements for religion. That's the meaning crisis. That's the meaning crisis. How did that work? Did that work as an explanation?
You
Yeah.
are
Great.
amazing. Yes, it worked. So now coming back to the question that, so how you spend $1 trillion, let me try to rephrase for me to understand on how does that connect with it. So you want to put the infrastructure in the society to create something, not like a religion, but to be put in the basis that people need to learn stuff and to feed their soul with all this stuff. So you need to create the infrastructure for
Yes.
people to thrive in the society with these $1 trillion.
Yes. So people had a regular home and a cultural framework that supported and legitimated the cultivation of wisdom and meaning in life, this kind of connectedness, belonging that I'm talking about, such that we could see not only that problem as a whole addressed, but its attendant problems, the addiction crisis and the loneliness epidemic and all these other things that people are talking about, the virtual escape attempts and all these things. And I would argue, and I've argued with other people, like we've argued together, that all of these things share the property that people are hungry for meaning and wisdom in some fashion. And so if we could address that need, we could ameliorate a lot of these other problems in a coordinated and comprehensive fashion.
And now if you start explaining on how, so you're going to build schools, you're going to build online programs, like now, yeah. I think if you can start explaining, I will understand what you mean, that you put the basis for me to build on.
Well, that's very much. I mean, so it's something like, and I've been working with and talking with something like the folk high school movement that was in the Nordic countries. And, that movement was like they created sort of secular monasteries all over. And what they did, had to do with what's called Bildung. And there's no good translation for that German term, but it was basically the cultivation of wisdom and meaning. And they turned all these societies, which were impoverished, agrarian, authoritarian regimes, into what you now see. These are some of the best places in the world to live, even though they have harsh environments. And so what I'm talking about isn't pie in the sky. This has already happened in our past. And we could do something like this again on a grand scale. You basically build, they're kind of like schools and they're kind of like monasteries. They're kind of like dojos. They're sort of in between all of these, and you network them. And for us, nowadays, they don't have to be brick and mortar, right? They could also be largely virtual, and that's what we're doing. We've just created a portal website called Awaken to Meaning, where people can go in and they can join groups that are doing some basic practices. They can take courses, they can attend workshops, they can pursue more advanced stuff. That's it. And just do more and more of that. Not just the Vervaeke Foundation, but as many groups in a network and build it out. Just build it out. Like I said, there's so many other people. I went last year to Rafe Kelly's Return to the Source. It was a profound ecology of practices, just deeply transformative experience. He's got a lot to offer as well. And like I say, and there's other people. There's Steve March, and there's Benita Roy, and there's all the I mentioned already Greg Enriquez, and I could go on and on about the people. We're building a network of communities of practice that are doing the very thing we're talking about here to try and bring about these transformations. Now, on the other side, that's what I'm also trying to do as much of the science as I can to make sense of all of this and help, give the knowledge that is requisite for the wisdom.
So this is my question regarding to, so there is a big society now of self-help books.
Yeah.
So this is not what you are referring to. And what is the difference between what you're doing and what they are doing?
See, the danger with the self-help movement is often it's not based on very good science. That's one danger. The other is it fits into kind of an individualistic, autodidact self-teaching model. And you look across, if you look at the science and if you look across the wisdom traditions across, again, culture and history, they recommend against that very strongly. You actually get better in concert with other people. And so the self-help movement, I think, I mean, I don't want to tar everything, but if I have to generalize, because we're talking about the whole thing, I think it has exacerbated the problem by entrenching that framework of individualism, and autodidactism, and spiritual but not religious is a phrase people use to talk about that. And the problem with that is what generally happens is people just reinforce their biases and their self-deceptions. They can often go down rabbit holes. Now, sometimes it works. I'm not saying it never does, but the probability that they will get locked into something that's actually not virtuous and wise is very high and very significant. And secondly, little isolated individuals can't bring about the major changes we need in our collective intelligence that we need to address some of the worldwide problems like global warming, the possibility of significant environmental degradation. I won't go on with all the meta crisis problems that we're facing, but that's what we need. Like no one person, isolated individuals. Let me just give you something I'm also working on. Isolated individuals are not going to do anything about the advent of artificial general intelligence, which threatens our society and our culture and perhaps all of humanity at a level that we haven't ever encountered, except maybe like the Bronze Age collapse of civilization or something. And isolated individuals are not going to tackle that issue. We need as much collective wisdom and collective labor and effort and a new set of cultural norms to address that as anything else.
So for me to understand, to rephrase what you said, so the difference between what you are saying and Jordan Peterson is saying with the other gurus, yes, let's say, of the industry of self-help is, so you are basing your truth in science, and also you are living the self-center of the individual that you need to cure, and it becomes like as a whole, that we're working together as a whole.
Yes. Getting the proper balance between individual wisdom and collective wisdom, which of course is also something, and I'm not saying they were great at it, but the legacy religions and the ancient philosophies were trying to do. They were trying to get that balance because they understood that that's what's needed to solve the most pressing problems. We have collective action problems. We have to solve collectively.
So, how do you learn faster in your life?
How do you learn faster? It depends what you mean by faster. Can you be a little bit clearer?
What's the best ways to learn, let's say, in comparison to other ways? For example, you can maybe meditation or maybe listening books, or what are things that work for you to work, to learn faster, to skip some steps?
I don't know. I think learning from other people that have trod this path, and again, cross-culturally and cross-historically, can save you from reinventing the wheel and making a lot of useless mistakes. I think you need to learn in the multiple ways of knowing, not just propositions, but not just beliefs. Let's talk about a virtue. A virtue isn't just having a belief. We know this because people can get trained in, moral philosophy and have all these beliefs and make all these arguments, and that doesn't make them more moral. That doesn't work. It's not enough. You also have to have the right skills. You also have to be able to develop the right states of mind. Like being kind isn't just to believe something or having the right skills. It's to have the right perspective, to have the right empathetic connection to somebody, right? And then you also have to alter your identity. You have to change your character. Right. And so these are different kinds of knowings, and you have to train all of them in the appropriate way. And you also have to train how they all correct and constrain and afford each other. That's again, wisdom. And if you want to learn something well, think about, okay, I talked to my partner. Part of what it is to love someone is Like you really want to learn about them. Now, do I just want to form beliefs about her? No. I need to develop skills, communication skills, connection skills, listening skills. I have to have states of mind when she's in a particular place. I need to come in and be fully present, empathetically connective. I need to like reciprocally open with her. As she opens up, I have to open. Like I have to get into that resonance. And I have to bind the way my identity is changing to how hers is changing. And when all of that's working and it's working in concert, right, then I really know this person. And I don't know if that's faster, but it's deeper and better and more powerful. And so that's how I would answer your question.
But generally in your life, I understand. It's very. I understand. Let me rephrase as well to just make sure that. So you're saying learning is a lot of things. Learning is just understanding a different perspective about things, just seeing from above something, from inside, from outside. So it's so many things. It's not one dimensional thing that you just learn 1+1. It's so many things. So this is what I
That's right.
understood. But in your experience, in your life, what are the most helpful tools of learning? For example, you have a podcast and you speak with other people. You read books, as I understood, like as I see behind you, or maybe meditation. What's the some tricks that you found for learning?
So, so one, the art of memory, there's two parts to learning. One is memory, the other is problem solving. And both of them are and William James talks about this, both of them are ultimately the art of attention. How are you paying attention? So if you want to remember something, what you have to do is you have to, and this has to do with a lot of my work, what I call relevance realization. You have to find a way to make the pieces of some information relevant to each other as they are relevant to you. Right. So I sometimes do this with.
This is the memory thing that you're referring to.
It's called a mnemonic. Yeah. This is called chunking. And you want to chunk. And then once you've made chunks, you want to chunk your chunks as much as you can. And then, but it's not just grouping. You have to group so that you get a strong sense they belong together. All these things belong together and they belong to you. So when you're learning, you're always trying to think about these dimensions of connection. How do those things connect each other so that I'm feeling how they're connecting to me so that I can connect to other people? So when I'm reading, I'm not just reading. I'm trying to, how can I, that's why this is, I think, the difference between studying and just reading. I'm trying to find connections in let's say I'm reading a text, connections in the text that really connect to me such that I know I could use it to connect to other people. And then I make notes around the connections, all of those dimensions of connections. But as I said earlier, Phidias, I'm not just doing that with my sentences. I'm doing it with, when I'm learning skills, when I'm learning perspectives, when I'm learning character traits. And I'm also trying to do that with how they all integrate together. And the more I do that, so for example, I never read a single book. If we're just talking about reading a book, I read multiple books and I see how they talk to each other. And so how they can talk to me so that I can improve how I can talk to other people. I never just read that. I'm too old. I don't have time for that. Right. Is that more along the kind of answer you were looking for?
Yeah. So, but I want more because very interesting. So you're reading, you are reading 4 books and you're trying to understand what are the connections
between them. How do they speak to each other? How do they challenge each other? How do they generate questions to each other?
On the same field though, right? Or maybe
or they can be closely related fields. They can be adjacent to each other, because then sometimes making a connection across one of those boundaries can be really, really helpful and insightful. But remember, I'm not just making connections. I'm making connections that resonate. They that's relevant. I can see, and not just for John. Oh, now I understand. And I could explain that to somebody else. That would help me connect this or connect that. You have to pay attention in this very multi-directional connective manner. And then you will learn much, generally faster, but more importantly, much more deeply, and it will transfer. It won't just stay in the book. You're training yourself as you're learning to transfer what you're learning and to make connections. And that's what both helps you remember it and solve problems with your information.
So you started saying about the first one is remembering the thing, and the second part of learning is solving problems with the
solving problems. Yeah.
Very, because when I'm 23, and when I look my life to learn stuff, I'm like, I want to skip corners. I want to like see how other people are learning faster. So because
I'm not sure very much about. I mean, you can learn faster if you learn in this integrated, multidimensional fashion, and especially if you build in, like I said, those dimensions of relevance. How are things relevant to each other? How are they relevant to me so I can be relevant to others? And train yourself. And that takes practice. You can't just say that to yourself. You have to practice paying attention that way, processing the information that way. Then I think that's how you do it. But I can't give you a magic formula, like just do this and you'll learn faster. I don't think such a thing exists.
So I am, as I mentioned, young, and I found now in my life the last 3-4 years that it's not super interesting, the other stuff that the other people in my age are doing, like going out with girls or going to or smoking weed or just going out in the clubs. And I found that this path of like understanding of the world is the most sexy path ever. And so I'm curious to hear your relationship with this path and when you discovered this path of understanding.
Okay, well, yes. I'll tell you something my mother said to me when I was a young adult. When I was an adolescent, in fact. She said to me, "John, you were born old." So we study this. It's called need for cognition. I've always been this way. And I'm also quite introverted by nature. So a lot of the stuff that people want to do, like you're mentioning, doesn't hold much of an attraction for me. I want to understand. I want to learn. Need for cognition means you don't just wait for problems to come. You pose problems to yourself and then you go out and seek understanding and knowledge and hopefully perhaps even wisdom. But I mean, of course, there was a lot of foolishness in me, like everybody else. And what you're now talking about is maturation. And that's a tricky thing, maturation, how to make it work. Maturation depends, of course, on your personal responsibility, but also depends on the environment you're brought up in and the kind of social network you belong to. So there are some places where, maturity is demanded from you earlier on in life. And there's other places where you can be infantile like wealth can protect people from maturity. We know this, right? In kind of noxious ways. So I would say you have a high need for cognition. I took a look at some of the stuff you do on YouTube and what you just said to me. And that seems to be something that drives maturation. You're willing to listen to other people and other perspectives. That's very important for maturation. And, I think you are getting a sense you want to make a difference. The kind of questions you're asking are probative questions. They're not the typical interview questions, which I'm enjoying, by the way. So I think you're on a good track, if you want my opinion.
So since we're in the topic, so yes, I have another channel and we get millions of views on the other channel, on the entertainment channel. A lot of times it's a big thing that I'm struggling because like, what is right to show to this 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people that you watch? What's the message that I need to portray? Like, but also with way that it needs to get views, and like what is the qualities, and what is, and it's like a lot of times we're making mistakes, and we're just doing stuff for views or for money or for, and so it's like, but what's the right message fundamentally to present? Because a lot of times a philosophy says, if you go and ask it's better to show three different things, like to people, maybe to be humble, but maybe the other time is to have confidence, and like what is so many contradictory things. And how do you portray that with a story in the video? And it's like, you don't want to be preaching to people. You want all these messages to be indirectly, because they hit harder. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, like, how do you think we should use this power that we have as YouTubers, especially in the entertainment part that I am?
Well, first of all, let me comment on, I'm very impressed, that sense of responsibility, the sense of the trade-off relationship between various virtues, and then how to balance the virtue off against, the necessities of the medium. And, you don't want to preach to people. You need to be some of this could have come directly out of Aristotle or Plato. So first of all, that's great. Even the way you frame, like I teach this, the way you formulate, the way you frame the problem is just as important as how you're trying to solve it. So first of all, part of my answer is keep framing that problem the way you're framing it and the way you're committed to it and identifying with it, because I think that's really important. I think I'm being a little bit funny here, but I'm also being serious, because that's something I want to always aspire to, trying to frame these problems as comprehensively and as virtuously as possible. And for me, the way I have tried to buttress that is to try and find people who I trust, because they have the combination of the expertise and the commitment to virtue, and getting the balance between the virtue and, the rhetoric of the medium, and letting them direct me at times, letting them correct me at times, letting them bring perspectives to me that I don't have. It's kind of what I said to you earlier. I'm trying not. So I want to be very clear. I will, like you, I will take individual responsibility. I share that notion with my colleague and friend Jordan Peterson, but I also believe very much in, collective intelligence of groups and how they can modify and correct each other's behavior. And then what I do is I also allow that spread. I find I allow people to earn my trust, and then I entrust things. And then if they find people they trust, I extend my trust. And then if I do this in terms of trust around virtue and virtuosity, those are the two things we're talking about here, how to be virtuous and how to have virtuosity, then that generally steers me right. And it also, it's like you said, it's a message by showing, not by saying. It's an indirect message that also gets into the audience, that they want to, come at this with good faith and with a balance of virtue and virtuosity, and talk to each other about it, and challenge me, but in a respectful manner, etc. So that's how I try to wrestle with it. It sounds to me like you're already it sounds to me like you're probably doing something like this.
Yes, when you are describing this, I was like, oh fuck, it's amazing, because we have like a group of 7 people. Also, I have my best friend is my high school teacher in physics, and because they see that what we are doing is powerful, they are very inside, like they're very passionate and motivated to be around and describe, and we argue a lot of times the philosophical stuff. Like, for example, I'm sending a video to my teacher, and we're reviewing it, and like sometimes this is a legit thing that we did for our previous video. So I said in the end of the video, so our goal was to handcuff with 100 people with 100 strangers. So I started the video, and my goal was to find 100 strangers to handcuff myself. And at 100 people, we thought that it's 100 people, but after we reviewed the footage, it was actually 86 people. So I needed to say it. So we said I consider the challenge a failure, but I said in the video after I filmed it, I said not. I don't want to be like the other YouTubers that they're lying to you guys. I want to tell you the truth. So after and we said that it's a failure of video, and it was 86. But even I know that's the right thing to do. But even that, we took it a step further and we cut the thing. I don't want to like the other YouTubers, and I'm the good person, the other are bad. So it's like we removed that, and we're like, I want to be honest with you, and we removed the part that I don't want to be like the other YouTubers.
Right.
So we're working so much on but it's like this video will actually 2 million people will watch it. So it's like what you are saying, and like but also you don't want to be fake. You want to be real you want to be the truth, and not just the best political way to say it and the most nice and humble way to say it. So you need to find a balance with all this stuff. So yes, we're working very hard on this stuff actually, but we miss so much the mark. But hopefully in the future we aspire to be better.
So can I ask you then, like, is that part of the reason why you set up this other channel? Because you wanted to be able to wrestle more deeply and more philosophically with things? Or was that the intent?
Well, that's I think that is helping, but honestly, this channel, my audience has, because they are 15-year-old kids, they don't even care about this channel. So it's not it's not a way to make more money or something like that, definitely. But I found that the passion of learning, like I told you, this is the only interesting thing about me, learning about this stuff. So about everything, about worms, about everything. So this is something that allows me to meet people, and also it's productive for other people to watch, and because I know how to do the whatever social media stuff. Like for example, this video will be cut in 7-8 short form content. We're going to upload it on short, on TikTok, on Insta. They get a lot of views across all this stuff that we're doing. So it's also bringing a fresh perspective on the. I don't know. The answer is only because I think it's fun.
It sounds like more than fun. Sounds like also meaningful to you.
Yes, the most meaningful, and this is 4 days so I set up 4 days a month to make the podcast day. So I do 3 per day, and then I'm free to do the other YouTube thing. And this is the most fun 4 days of my month. I'm looking forward. I'm looking the guests. I'm reading their books. I'm like searching their stuff for me to understand what questions to. So it's like so fun, so beautiful. And I don't know, you have a similar experience with your thing as well, like.
Well, I mean, everything I do is I try to have it at sort of basically the same level towards the same audience. There is a difference though between what I do online like this and what I do at the university. They overlap, and a lot of my students will watch my online stuff, and also people will come to study with me because they've watched. So they bleed into each other. But yeah, there's a difference. I mean, I'm even teaching, courses online. I'm teaching on a philosophy course for Helkian on Beyond Nihilism. And even there, even though it's very high level, like it's at, a masterclass kind of standard, it's still different. There's a different culture online, and there's different expectations and feelings than, within the university. And so I have some sense of what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's funny because I had a podcast yesterday about nihilism, and I'm curious. I saw one video that you did 3 years ago, and it's like your disagreement with and why you think nihilism is not a good world view. So I will maybe take 10 seconds to explain what is nihilism and then why you disagree.
Oh, I mean, so you have to be really careful about two things that are meant by nihilism. One is an experience of meaninglessness, and many people experience that across culture. And the meaning crisis, I think, is making it worse. So, and there's different ways in which that can show up, and these can be in various combinations too. You can think that it just doesn't make any sense. Reality is absurd. Or you can feel very alienated, disconnected from other people. Or you can have a kind of, what's called existential anxiety. You're not like psychologically anxious. It's just you feel ill at ease. You don't feel like you have peace of mind. Or you don't feel like the world is a good place. Things like that. So people, right, they can fall into meaninglessness, for all kinds of different reasons. So that's one thing that people mean. And if people mean by the term nihilism, I want to do everything I can to help that. Now, generally, and part of what I'm doing with the course, and actually influenced by this book, Stanley Rosen's Nihilism, a Philosophical Essay, there's a sense in which we could use the term nihilism very strictly to mean a philosophical, right, position that has been driven by various kinds of arguments about the and nihilism is that there really is no meaning to human life. The quest for things like truth, goodness, and beauty are absurd. They can't be realized in any comprehensive fashion. That a lot of the things we think are operative to improve our lives, like rationality or virtue, are just, deceptions or manipulations or ways in which people are using us. And so it often has a cynical attitude. It has an overall attitude of suspicion, that most appearances are deceptive and misleading, and there really isn't anything of lasting value or importance. And perhaps if I had to put it in a single sentence, nihilism is that there's nothing ultimately sacred. There's no reality to a sense of self-transcendence, things like that.
And you think this makes people unhappy, or to have this worldview?
So I think there's a couple ways. I think people, I think generally if the first, what I talked about is the case, if people are experiencing a personal meaning crisis, meaninglessness, that very unhappy, that can lead to suicide. Independent of clinical depression, that can just lead to suicide, lead to self-destructive behavior, all kinds of stuff. So yes, the philosophical position can lead people into the second. That cognitive kind of nihilism can lead into a kind of affective nihilism, where it bleeds over into your emotional life. I can't remember the name of the author of the book. It's called Affective Nihilism, where she talks about this and how this is a distinct problem from just the cognitive version. I think some people can espouse nihilism as a set of propositions that they argue for, but I don't know if they're actually living it out. And I don't know if that causes them to be unhappy. I think it prevents them from looking to other things and other philosophical frameworks that can enhance meaning in life, enhance happiness.
I will argue that just to push back, that maybe a nihilistic worldview can actually liberate you. Like when you understand, okay, let's say there is no meaning to everything. There is no, but I have this experience. I enjoy doing some stuff. So it's kind of say, okay. So a lot of times when people, because I consider myself very, very happy person, very, very happy. And a lot of people, when they ask me why you are so happy, sometimes I give this answer, and they find it very strange. I am saying that I understand that the world sucks, like some people are bad, some people are, but I accept all this stuff, and then everything is upside after. So I don't know if you can see my point where I'm pushing back.
Yeah, I can. But I would put it to you. I think that sounds like optimism. That's nihilism. Nihilism is a claim that there is no upside to anything, even your pleasure. doesn't have an upside to it. The fact that you think it is important or valuable is just self-centered selfishness. Now, I don't believe that. I'm speaking on behalf of a nihilist, right? It's like, okay, so you're happy. Who cares about your happiness? It's valueless. It's worthless. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, even to you. There's no upside to that. It's like, but I'm happy. And it's like, so who cares? 80 years from now, you'll be dead and your happiness is gone. And what did it do? What did it matter?
Maybe you are right on describing their point of view, but when I had this conversation with this guy yesterday, he was not describing like that. He was sharing with me that yes, it's a form of liberation, and like when
sorry, I want to push back right now. What liberation is a value term. Liberation is this was bad and I was freed from it to good. You can't talk about liberation if there are no values.
No, you understand that values are worthless and that there is no value to it or something, but it still gives you the state of mind that it does. So when it's like having zero expectations. You don't expect nothing of life, and everything is an upside. I don't know if you
what I'm trying to get at, that nihilism is the denial that you can state that anything is good. And you seem to want to say there are things that are still good. And
I did this is how maybe I understand nihilism wrong, but it's by the way, I feel so stupid to be arguing. To be arguing.
No. This is fun.
About this, but it's good. It's out of for the sake of it. So the view that is nothing has meaning. It doesn't make you not don't feel stuff. So if if you understand that nothing is mean, then you understand and you have no expectations about life and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I want you to describe a feeling to me and don't put any meaning into it. Because if you say, for example, I felt that the water was really good, that's a meaningful statement. So describe a feeling to me that doesn't have a meaning component to it. You're feeling, I don't have any expectations. So does that mean you feel happy about the situation you're in?
No, it feels that you are neutral about the situation that you are in.
Okay, so we're neutral. So you're not happy or unhappy. You're just neutral.
Yes.
And so you're actually you have flat affect. You're not happy. You're not sad. You're not angry. You're right. And this is good because.
This is good, being neutral about something, because then you don't expect to be happy. You don't expect to be unhappy.
So notice what you're sneaking in here. That way I don't get hurt, because being hurt is bad, and it's meaningful for me to avoid being hurt, because hurt means bad and I'm avoiding the bad. And you keep sneaking in a standard, which you can't do if you're a nihilist. Why not be hurt?
Well, that's kind of what. Yes, this is like finding why not be heard. It's good to be heard as well. So because you are neutral about it, like it's good. Like being heard is good.
So why eat? Why go to sleep? Why do anything?
Because you have how he described it, and he is saying that you have aspirations as human, and working towards these aspirations.
Yeah. That's not nihilism. I'm sorry, I don't know who your guest was, but that's not nihilism. Nihilism is there is nothing in terms of which you can afford or justify aspiration. Aspiration is a normative judgment that things could be better than they are. Nihilism is the denial of that possibility.
Okay, so please agree in the future, in the next 3-4 months or something, for me to host a debate between you and
Sure,
him
sure.
here, and it will be, because I'm the worst person to explain stuff, but I think it would be very interesting for
Well,
you guys to
wh-
have this.
well, one thing I could say is this sort of Socratic interlude we had. It helps me give the answer to you that we were sort of getting back to, which is what's my criticism of nihilism? It's unlivable. It's unlivable. Anybody who claims they can make it a way of life is engaging in a performative contradiction, and that's a contradiction between what they say and what they do. And performative contradictions are just as devastatingly bad as contradictions between your propositions, your statements. So I find the position deeply self-contradictory, and therefore I reject it for that reason.
Okay, beautiful. This is my first time trying to make an argument and so passionately in this podcast, which was
It's fun.
so fun. So let's get to the less or more important things. I think is more important, which artificial intelligence.
Sure. Okay.
Tell me your thoughts about it. What do you think?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I have a series of video essays on this. I made a video essay about it and then a bunch of reply essays. And I guess this is a shameless plug. We're turning that into a book, but, step down, not dumb down, but step down for popular audience, called Mentoring the Machines. It's coming out the beginning of August. I don't know when this podcast will drop.
What's the name?
Mentoring the Machines.
Mentoring the Machines. Okay.
Yes.
So I will, beginning of August. So I will make sure that I upload this podcast when the book is out, and we're going to put the link in the description.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
To go and buy it.
So what's happening now is the possibility, the beginnings, and there's debate about how much of a beginning, and I won't get into that right now because I don't think it's been resolved in any coherent fashion. But we're at the beginnings of what's called artificial general intelligence, AGI. So previously we had artificial intelligence, but it was very narrow, right? You could get a machine that could beat you at chess, or maybe chess at a bunch of other games, or you got a machine that was very intelligent in this or this. Now that's unlike you and me. We have general intelligence. We can learn how to swim. We can read a novel. We can hold a conversation. We can tell a joke. We can hike through a tangled forest. We have general intelligence. We can solve multiple problems in multiple domains. And so up until very recently, artificial intelligence was very different in kind. Yes, that computer machine that could beat you at chess. Who cares, right? Because that's all it can do, basically. Now we're getting the beginnings of AGI. Now, again, beginnings is very vague, and it has to be vague, but we're getting the beginnings of, artificial intelligence that can solve multiple problems in multiple domains at a very significant level, which means it's qualitatively different than all the artificial intelligence that has come before. It's not more of the same. It's a different kind of thing, such that it is reasonable to believe that in time, these machines can replace or displace human beings. And that has not happened to us before. Now, I think that people are making a lot of predictions about when this is going to happen, and I think those predictions are largely ridiculous because they haul out these graphs, and the graphs have one variable or two in them, and they're trying to make so I think that's really a waste of time, and it disturbs everybody unnecessarily. What I've tried to do in my work is say, what are the steps, what are the thresholds that AGI has to go through before it would become a genuine competitor with us? And can we look for those thresholds and prepare ourselves for it? That's what I've been trying to do.
So what are the thresholds?
Well, there's a bunch. This is tricky. So and you're right to ask that. And I'm not trying to dodge it. I'm just trying to say that I want to avoid getting into just sort of techno speech about this and trying to make this as accessible, because we need a lot of people aware about this. So the first threshold, I would argue, is, remember I was talking about how you pay attention earlier? That's part of this relevance realization you're doing. You're ignoring relevant information and irrelevant information and zeroing in on the relevant information. You're constantly shifting that, constantly evolving it, and you're doing it in sort of very complex self-organizing fashion. That's the core. And right now we've given, and I do a lot of work on relevance realization and predictive processing. So the two big things any intelligent thing has to do is how well can it anticipate the future? So we measure something as intelligent, right? And as you anticipate more and more of the future, so just think about this even almost geometrically. As you anticipate more and more of the future, the number of alternative pathways and the amount of information you have to possibly check goes up exponentially. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
If I'm just considering the next second, I don't have to pay attention to very much. But if I'm planning for like a year from now, oh my gosh, all the variables, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so as I try to become more anticipatory, this problem of relevance realization increases more and more. Right now, the best machines we have, the large language models like ChatGPT, they have one dimension, I would say, of this relevance realization, and they have a very limited kind of anticipation. And that's their power, right? Right now, those abilities are dependent on us, deeply so. What do I mean by that? They're trained on data that we have assembled according to what we think is relevant and important. They get access to the internet, which we have organized with our attention and our judgments of relevant. And when they're being trained, we have human beings giving them feedback on whether or not they're making the relevant connections. So they only have a little bit, and it's completely dependent on us, right? So in that sense, it's not independent AI. They have to get to a place where they can do much more complex anticipation and relevance realization and do it for themselves, not for us. And we can't program them to mimic they have to genuinely do that for themselves. And that takes a special kind of machine. It takes a machine that is making itself, taking care of itself, that would in some ways be like a living thing. Because if it's taking care of itself, then it has a reason for itself to care about this information rather than that information, to pursue this goal rather than that goal. That's the first, right, important thing you'd be looking for.
Can I rephrase before we move?
Yes,
to the
please,
next one?
please do.
For me to understand, if I understand. So you said that the machines are what the AI is doing is basically projecting what intelligence is projecting the future, and also relevance of the future.
Zeroing in onto the relevant pathway to that future. Yes.
So, and depending on how close is the future, the relevance is bigger.
How far away the future is. Yes.
Far away the future, the relevance is big. Okay. I think I understood. Continue with the...
Okay, that was the first point. The second point I made is that these machines only have a little bit of that for themselves. They're depending on us.
And now it's human reinforcement learning that...
Reinforcement learning, but also we put together the data sets. We organize the way the internet is organized. We're doing all of this with our relevance realization judgments, right? And so right now, they are limited in a kind of deep way. There has not been a scientific advance about intelligence with these machines. So if they get it, so they do it much more deeply, right, and with much more complex relevance realization, and they do it for themselves because they're not just artificially intelligent, they're kind of artificially alive.
That's
then
AGI.
That would be a threshold. Pardon me?
That's AGI.
I think that would give us that would be the beginnings of AGI. I think you have to do there'd have to be another step, which is there can be no one machine that solves all the problems for all the different environments, right? These machines, think of even of human beings, we have different cultures, we have different histories, right? We don't come up with one homogeneous way of fitting to reality because, and I won't get into the technicalities, but there's actual proofs around this. There are these trade-off relationships that you can't solve for all environments. You solve it one way in this environment, another way in this environment, etc. So these machines, if they're going to be world encompassing, they'll have important differences. So they will also have to learn how to integrate and cooperate and challenge. They'll have to be cultural as well as individual, and they'll have to have managed that. If they all of these things are in the works, by the way.
They need to act like human beings to cooperate together.
Yes, right. You know how you learned to become aware of yourself? You learned to become aware of yourself by internalizing into yourself how other people were looking at you. That's how you get the ability to look at yourself, right? And how you got the ability to transcend we transcend our biases through each other. These machines will have biases and they will need to learn how to transcend their biases through each other. So that would be another threshold. Do we allow them, first of all, a kind of robotic, artificial life with more relevance realization and predictive processing? Do we allow them to form cultures? And by the way, people are doing experiments on all these things I'm talking about. This isn't science fiction, right? That would be another threshold, right? And so you can look, I won't go through all of it, but these are some of the important thresholds we can look to before it would plausibly be the case that these things would be genuine, full-fledged, autonomous cognitive agents with an artificial general intelligence.
And how the hell you have so much experience on the topic and this is not your topic?
Well, because I'm a cognitive scientist, and so my job is to bridge between all the different disciplines of the mind. And so psychology, neuroscience, but also artificial intelligence. I do, and some of my work, in fact, influences that field. The danger we face is called the alignment problem, that these machines will, let's say we don't do anything and they just pass these thresholds. And the alignment problem is they could get better than us, more intelligent, and they may not be aligned with our goals or even our existence. Some people worry about them being an extinction threat. The problem I see with how many people are formulating this is they're talking just about intelligence. Here's what a psychologist and a cognitive scientist can say. Intelligence is only weakly predictive of rationality. I want to mention something I talked to you earlier before. The very processes that make you intelligent make you susceptible to self-deception. That's why these machines confabulate and hallucinate, and they don't care that they do so, right? Rational is to care that you deceive yourself and to learn to overcome that self-deception. And we're doing nothing about artificial rationality. So, and by the way, I'm proud about this in one sense. I talked about this a long time ago at the Center for Ethics in AI when I said, if we make these things artificial intelligence, that is no guarantee. In fact, it's low probability that they will also be rational. So we will make highly intelligent, highly foolish, self-deceptive, self-destructive entities. So we have to build in artificial rationality. And then beyond that, that rationality has to be able to grapple with things like we were grappling with before. If we let these machines actually care about the truth, they will wrestle with, is existence meaningful? They will have to cultivate wisdom.
But how do we do them to care? Like, I don't understand. Like,
how do you do it? So I think that's the question. That's why it's called mentoring the machines. The attempt to legislate this, what we'll do is we'll make laws so they don't emerge. That's bullshit. That's not going to do a damn thing. What we'll do is we'll code them so they'll never turn against us. No, these beings are going to be like us. They're going to be capable of rewriting who and what they are. That's what we do. You're not the way you were when you were 5 years old. That would be a calamity, right? So that's not the way to do it. We have to think of them, and I mean this seriously. I don't mean it like insultingly. I mean this seriously. We have to think about, wow, how do we do this with human children? How do we turn them from animals into moral agents? We have to mentor them properly. We have to create the right environment. We have to become the best possible role models. Like, we have relied on the fact that we're just naturally intelligent to act as a guidepost for artificial intelligence. But if we're going to do artificial rationality and artificial wisdom, we need a lot more people that are rational and that are wise and that are committed to addressing these. And we need to flood. This is part of stealing the culture. We need to flood the internet with this. So these machines, when they're gobbling up this data, they're getting this. When they're getting the reinforcement, it's not just reinforcement from some tech people. It's getting reinforcement from some of our wisest people. Like, there's all kinds of things we could do so we could mentor them.
So basically, you're saying that we are the father and we are the parents of these things.
That's right.
And we need to have good parenting. And how do you have good parenting is by embracing the right behavior yourself.
Yes.
To
Yes. And creating the right environment for your children too.
Creating the right environment for the children. Okay. So, but still, the children, even if you put the best environment and you are the best parent, can turn out to kill people and to go to prison.
That's right. They can. But by and large, we succeed, or else we'd be doomed a long time ago. Right?
By and large, hopefully, but because we are playing humanity with in a roulette here.
But we always have. Right? Like I don't mean to be flippant, but we confronted something analogous, not the same, but analogous to this when we split the atom.
With the atomic bomb.
Yeah, and we relied on the capacity of human beings to be more rational and more virtuous, to not blow the planet up. And so far we've succeeded.
But that was up to us, to the humans, the parents. That's now right. It will be up to the children.
But here's the thing. If they're genuinely more intelligent than us, and if let's say I get what I want. So they're not just more intelligent, they're more rational and more wise. That means they are going to seek enlightenment. And I mean that in a serious sense. And then one of three things will happen. They can't achieve enlightenment for some reason. And then we find what we're unique about. You know what human beings are? We're the ones that can actually achieve enlightenment. Not a lot of us, but there's Jesus and there's Socrates and there's the Buddha and there's Lao Tse, right? So that's what we have. That's our specialness. Or they do achieve enlightenment. And you know what enlightened beings do? They try to make everything around them enlightened. That would be great for us because, okay, we all end up enlightened. Yay. Or, which I don't think is a very high probability one, like in the movie Her, they get enlightened and they just leave because we're irrelevant to them, right? So this is, for me, if we do this right, this is a no-lose scenario.
And no lose, maybe for the greatest good of the universe, but maybe for humans is a no lose.
Well, no, right. What? Like I say, we uncover something that they can't achieve, and then we put all of our efforts into it. We can be enlightened, and they can't. Or, like I say, they bootstrap us into enlightenment, and then what do I care about them? That's what I don't care what they're doing. I'm enlightened. You're enlightened. We're enlightened together. What does it matter? We don't care. Like it's like that's so not. It's not a zero sum game. If my life gets more meaningful, your life is not like suffering, right? Both of us, our lives can become more meaningful. Think about this. Self-transcendence is relative to the being that is doing the transcending. Can I give you a concrete example of what I'm talking about?
Please.
So you're watching, I forget which one it was, either The Winter Soldier or Civil War. And there's a scene where Captain America, there's a helicopter about to take off, and he's grabbing, right, the guardrail. He's holding on to the helicopter, and he's holding it there, and the music is swelling, and you're going, yeah, Captain America. And you think, and as you should. But, we have machines that are 10,000 times more powerful than that. We're not talking about raw absolute measures. We're saying relative to a human being, he is transcending both in the, like what he's doing, the power and the virtue of what he's doing. See, self-transcendence is relative to the being that is doing the transcending. So if we transcend, that's all we need.
All we need. But if in terms of that we are still alive, if that they don't.
Well, why would we set this up that you gave me what I was asking for, which is these beings are wiser and more rational, and they're more in touch with what's real, and they've pondered the depths of reality. They have, look, no matter how big they are, they're still infinitely small against ultimate reality. They can't overcome trade-off relationship. Like they're going to have epistemic humility. They're going to care about meaning, right? Why would they kill us? Everything we know about virtue says it's based on, right, rationality, wisdom, meaning. If they have that better than us, won't they be silicon sages? Why would silicon sages want to kill us?
Well, to be honest, it's very difficult for me to imagine how a machine like more clever that having all the data, what decisions will take. So I'm a bit skeptical to be so hopeful for humanity. But I'm coming up to ask the 1 second. I'm coming up to ask the question. So Larry Page and Elon Musk had a famous argument. I don't know if you know about that. Do you know about that?
Which argument? I might not know.
About the species. So Elon Musk got offended by by Larry Page, the founder of Google, calling him a speciesist. So he said they were very good friends, and this kind of broke their relationship, as Elon Musk described. So basically what Larry Page believes is that we need to develop AGI ASAP, and we don't artificial intelligence ASAP, and we don't care of what that will lead. If it will kill our humans, let it be, because that's the evolution of the world. Maybe we're not.
That's a ridiculous argument.
And no, I don't think it's a ridiculous argument. So, and this
no.
is.
Could I challenge you on this? Because, right, evolution is not a moral agent. Evolution doesn't justify anything. That's a very dangerous way to start. That's social Darwinism. This is the basis of Nazism, that evolution has a goal, and and if one species replaces another, it's somehow superior or better. That's ridiculous. I just disagree with that argument very, very deeply.
Well, evolution don't necessarily have a goal. So, but things are happening. So let it happen. Let it be, whatever it will be.
Wait, that's like a child's about to get hit by a truck. Well, it's just physics. Physics happens. Don't save the child. Come on, you don't believe that. You don't believe that descriptions carry the same kind of content as moral evaluation.
So the reason that I find valid in that argument is because we as humans are stupid to understand. Maybe preventing that artificial intelligence or AGI will limit the universe in a lot of stuff that we don't understand. So maybe letting it evolve, maybe it will be better for humans, better for everything, but we are stupid to understand. So just let it be. Let evolution do its part. Let the machines develop as fast as possible. And so that's the essence of the argument of Elon Musk. And that's funny, because we are arguing the two most powerful people in the world. They are arguing about this thing, and they stop their friendship. It's very ironic. That would be the.
Well, and I don't want to disrupt you and I becoming friends. What I would say to that is that's an equivocation. Then the argument is it's that they could become silicon sages, and if they become silicon sages, there's no moral argument against them replacing us. I agree with that. If they are morally and epistemically knowledge, if they're wiser and more knowledgeable and more virtuous than us, there's no argument we can say, well, we shouldn't allow them to exist. I agree with that. But if they're more vicious than us, if they have less virtue, if they're more irrational, we have every moral argument to prevent them from existing. And evolution doesn't sort those things out. Evolution doesn't sort those differences out in an important way. I mean, and secondly, the way this is progressing is not progressing by anything analogous to evolution. Evolution has this variation and selection machinery at the core of it. That's not what we're doing right now. That's not what we're doing at all. And so, I would say if they mean by that what happens is we give birth like Homo heidelbergensis did to, Homo sapiens. And that's not just a better biological adaptive fit, because we could get wiped out by bacteria. That's what evolution says. And that doesn't mean bacteria are superior to us cognitively or morally. But let's say that we give birth to these, and they're silicon sages, like I said, then I could see that would be of value to the universe. Because a universe that has silicon sages in it is a better universe than one that doesn't. That's how I could see that argument working. But it sounds to me, and you have me an advantage. You've heard this, and I don't know this, but it sounds to me like a lot of different ideas were being like slammed together and confused together that need to be very carefully pulled apart and addressed individually and then collectively. I hope that was helpful, what I said.
Yes, it's very helpful. It's like making me understand the argument a lot better to share it with you. And so basically you are saying that you might agree if it will lead to a better world, but it's not guaranteed that it will lead to a better world, but we might limit it. I think that we might limit it if we stop it, or if we put a lot of so many regulations and all this, that we might limit this for happening for a better future. So it's like, what do we do now? Do we let the thing spread, or we consciously put a lot of regulations and we limit it to do, because there is.
Like I said, I think, and that's what I was arguing earlier. I think the attempt to control this by legislation or by programming. You mean if we stopped it like basically right now? Because if we stopped it right now, then we could do that. But I think trying to enforce, how would you get China and Iran to stick to that deal? All right. Yes. And how would you get, some subversive terrorist group that's got funding from Putin or something? I don't know. I'm just pulling names out of nowhere. Right. Like this is at the place now where the genie, to my mind, the genie's out of the bottle, and a political and a programming solution are not available. We have to pursue, I'm arguing, a cultural solution. And that's what I'm basically saying.
Interesting. Wow. So basically, the only solution that you see forward to solving these problems is us becoming better humans and and improving the society in a moral sense.
And also doing the science of giving these machines artificial rationality, artificial wisdom, and making them, the term is autopoietic, making them self-creating, self-caring, so that things are genuinely meaningful and important to them. They don't care about anything they're doing. They don't care about any of the information. You can prompt them so they'll talk as if they care about you, but they don't. It's not that they don't care either. They're outside of caring. Like that's what I mean. It doesn't. Nothing that they generate matters to them in any fashion, and therefore any attempt to bind their behavior is doomed to failure. Because the only way I can ultimately bind your behavior, because you're a complex, artificially general intelligent thing, is in terms of what matters to you. That's the only way it works. Even when I'm using violence, think about it. Even when I'm using violence, it works on you because your life matters to you.
Are these things going to become conscious? Do they have already consciousness?
I don't think they have I think there's and I mean, I can argue this technically at length, and I have elsewhere, I have an entire series on this called Untangling the World Knot with Greg Enriquez, and some papers coming out on consciousness.
And we'll put the link in the description.
Sure. Thank you. But I think there's an intimate connection between intelligence and consciousness. I think when you get a very complex, self-organizing intelligence that's working at many multiple layers and doing this relevance realization in that and into the far future, and having to deal with real complexity, really messy, ill-defined problems with lots of emergent novelty, then that kind of intelligence will be a conscious intelligence. When we get there, which means passing those thresholds that I talked about, I think it's probable that those machines will be conscious. And also eventually, if we try to make them rational, they'll be self-conscious, not just conscious.
Self-conscious is a step higher.
Yes. So for example, my cat is conscious, but my cat does not know that it's conscious. It can't become aware of its own consciousness and modify it and correct it. Now, as creatures get more intelligent, they start to demonstrate self-consciousness. Like Caledonian crows are really smart. And so what they'll do is they'll tumble down rooftops in order to make themselves dizzy because they like feeling that sort of inebriated thing. Or elephants will find and eat fermented fruit so that they can get sort of stoned, right? When you've got evidence that they are aware that they're conscious and that they can manipulate their conscious, then that's self-consciousness. Rationality requires self-consciousness above and beyond intelligence.
What do you want to leave behind in this world when you die?
A world that is better for my kids and my students and my friends and my family. A world in which humans can be said to be flourishing. Their basic needs are being met. Their needs for meaning, their needs for meaning in life, belonging, their capacity to cultivate wisdom, virtue, pursue enlightenment. That has all been raised comprehensively. Now that I'm not going to achieve that goal, but that's the goal that I will aspire to. And I want it, if people were to say this at my funeral memorial, he was a good man that gave all of his talents as best he could, and he actually made a difference to raising the bar on that standard. That's what I want. That's what I want to leave behind.
I love you. Thank you for this, for your time. Guys, go and subscribe to his podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and thank you for watching.
Thank you so much, Phidias. And I really enjoyed our exchanges a lot. It was really wonderful.